Welcome to Fireside Nets, your number one podcast for everything Brooklyn Nets news, information, reactions, and so much more. I'm your host, Spen Harris, a.k.a. Spenny and the Nets, and we are joined once again by senior writer for the New York Daily News and our very own monthly Nets insider, CJ Holmes. CJ, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Got some family coming to town tomorrow. Nets are finally back in town. Big games this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say that these next two games could, spell this team's fate, but I guess we'll see how it all plays out.
You know, the one thing I like is that it is leap year this year, so we do get that extra day in February, and who knows, maybe the Nets get a little leap year magic for some reason, because February has been one of the worst months in recent memory for the Brooklyn Nets. You fire your head coach, you have a 50-point loss on your record, you have guys getting hurt, you have your stars not stepping up. We'll get into it, but I'll tell you this, CJ, March can't be worse than February was. I refuse to believe it.
I mean, logic says that it can't get any worse than it currently is. I mean, this Nets team has lost their last four games by 26 or more points. Jock Vaughn fired. Now Kevin Ollie is, thrusted into interim head coach role, being forced to try to pick up the pieces and just cobble together something with this roster. But it hasn't been looking good. It's tough to even say that they're trending in a positive direction right now. But as I said at the top of the show, these are two huge games coming up for Brooklyn on Thursday and Saturday against the Atlanta Hawks. 10th team in the Eastern Conference. Brooklyn's at 11. Atlanta, I believe, is 4 games up right now. If you split these next two, then it's still a race. But you go down 6 games. I mean, that's a really, really tough hole to climb out of. So I think that Brooklyn fans should find some comfort in the fact that despite everything that has gone on this season, this team is still in position to, try to punch their ticket to the postseason, via the play-in tournament. And, that's what the play-in tournament was created for, to create some parity at the bottom of the standings. And parity we have. So, Mikal Bridges, I don't travel on the road with the other beat writers in this role, but, Mikal Bridges was talking to reporters in Orlando after the last game, asked about these next 2 games against the Hawks. Are you guys, is this your NBA Finals series, or is this? It's like a playoff series, right? Kind of essentially, right? And Mikal kind of just said, "Hey, the next game's the most important game." Honestly, hearing that, I would have liked to hear more fire from him. Maybe something along the lines of, we know how important these games are. We got to lock in, something like that. But it just felt kind of casual, and this is not a casual situation if this team, wants to make something of this season. So all hands got to be on deck over these next 2 games. They're already going to be without Cam Thomas tomorrow night. So it's an uphill climb, but this Nets team is funny, man. As bad as they can look sometimes, they can look damn good on certain nights too. So they're gonna have to find a way to get 2 wins over these next 2 games.
I mean, you bring up the 2 games against Atlanta. Mikal Bridges has played his best basketball of the season against Atlanta.
It's some very entertaining games between the Nets and the Hawks this season.
Clutch baskets. I mean, he was our best player in those games, and has been for the majority of this season. I don't know. He's going through a rough stretch. This is a way you get out of it. Okay, you played great against this team in the beginning of the season. Your season's on the line. I think that Nets fans who are questionable about Mikal Bridges, and trust me, there's been a lot more of him recently amid this terrible stretch he's on. But not only are the playoffs on the line, I feel like in a certain way, Mikal Bridges' reputation is on the line. And now I know it's a short sample size after the All-Star break. 4 games, he's had one decent game, 2 games against the Hawks team, and Trae Young is playing or not playing?
He's not playing.
He's not playing. So, yeah, if there was ever a moment where Mikal Bridges can prove and say, hey, guys, relax. I'm the guy at the beginning of the year who was playing well when we were winning games. I'm still that guy. I'm a guy you can build around. I need to see that these next few games.
Yeah, and then Mikal himself admitted, after the Orlando game that he could be better. But here's the reality of the situation. Mikal Bridges is who he is. I mean, since arriving in Brooklyn, he's been playing out of his body, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? He's been playing above and beyond what anyone thought he was capable of. And, because of the way this roster is constructed, he's been leaned on heavily as a number one scoring option when, it's no offense to Mikal at all. He's a phenomenal player at both ends of the court, but I view him as more of a complimentary guy, maybe not necessarily a Robin, but like a Batman Beyond, like, you know what I'm saying? Because of that, when he does have these slumps, as one he's in right now, it's magnified so much heavily because the team relies on him so much. But the truth is, like, it shouldn't be all on Mikal. Just because Mikal has an off night, what did Kevin Ollie say after the game? When guys go down, when guys are off, we expect guys to step up. That should be the case. Like, Mikal should have someone there to cover him. It shouldn't all be on Mikal night in and night out. And the truth is, if Mikal has an off night, the Nets are probably not going to win.
Mikal Bridges, yeah, I'm with that. Makes a lot of sense. And Mikal Bridges aside, let's take his struggles and put them on the back burner for a second. And shout out to Saint. Good day to you too, my friend. What else is going wrong with this team right now? Is it lack of scoring? Is it lack of talent? Is it lack of effort? Is it a new coach? Is it all of the above? If you had to point to a few factors as to why they're losing in this fashion, we talked about Mikal. Is there anything else that Nets fans should be a little bit concerned about?
I mean, the answer is all of the above. Kevin Ollie has been in place for 3 games now. And, although he has been with the team all year round, that is very much true. This is his first swing at this head coaching thing in the NBA. Like, there's not going to be change, should not be expected overnight. And whatever adjustments he's been trying to make, you can barely tell because the Nets have been so inefficient offensively. Simply just not making shots, simply just not guarding. I don't think it's to say it's a talent issue might be a little bit of a stretch. There are talented players up and down this roster. The issue is they don't necessarily complement each other, right? If that makes sense. So it's a bunch of pieces. It's a bunch of puzzle pieces that don't fit together, but it's a high quality puzzle. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense, but above all, us reporters, we're not in the locker room at every single moment. We don't see every second of practice. There's a lot that goes on behind closed doors that you don't see. But as a former player myself, I do know that there are a lot of things that go on behind closed doors that never even touch the light of day, right? You just get a sense that there's just something wrong, like fundamentally, with this team that is leading to these struggles. Because, in most cases, as someone who played on a lot of bad Auburn teams, you can go look it up, right? There's a reason why this team is struggling the way they are. There's a reason why they've been so bad since that Milwaukee game. And I don't know if you want to just point the entire finger at that Milwaukee game and saying that's the moment where this season went downhill, but there's something going on in that locker room that's just funky to me, right? And then I can't quite put my finger on it. No one's going to say it, right? No one's going to admit it, right? But it's just something just feels funky. And it kind of just feels like this is something that's not going to be figured out this season. I've been wrong. I've bet against the Warriors. When I was covering the Warriors, I've bet against them numerous times, only to see me prove them wrong. But, the Nets aren't the Warriors. The Nets don't have that championship pedigree to lean on, or a plethora of Hall of Fame players, right? Because that's what bails the Warriors out 9 times out of 10. The Nets don't have that. Whatever's going on with them, they got to figure out amongst themselves, and it just doesn't feel like it's going to be solved this season. I mean, what made this Nets team to me, I hopped on the beat about 20 games in, maybe 20, 25 games in, I hopped on the beat. And when I first got here, they played with so much energy and so much passion and so much fight. And, it's just gone right now. It's just gone. Like, they're out here getting ran out the gym, and it's not a talent issue. It's a want to issue. It's a focus issue. Like, you got to wonder sometimes if guys, their minds are, elsewhere out there. There's a lot of talk, from Kevin Ollie, like, these guys, I know these guys love each other, and, talk like amongst the players, we're super close and things like that. It just doesn't feel like it when you see the product on the court, because preventing games from snowballing, rallying back to make games competitive, that takes heart, that takes togetherness, and they're not doing that like nearly enough. And it just gives me the impression that there's something more going on with this Nets team than people around the organization are letting on.
I'm gonna say some things, CJ, and as a reporter for New York Daily, you don't have to respond. You can nod, you can react however you want. But everything you just said, if you really think about it, this team was playing with passion. They were playing with fire. What has changed since then? Well, let's see. Spencer Dinwiddie was on the team. He was an integral piece at the end of last season. He kind of had that spurt with Mikal, with Cam Johnson, where those 3 guys were looking like leaders on that team. Nick Claxton was playing good basketball. Obviously, he gets swept by the Sixers season over, but you come into this year with relatively the same core, those 4 guys. Add Cam Thomas, who starts to light it up. No one's going to hate on that. He's scoring 20, 30 points a game. I don't think too many people, my guess would be not a lot of people were mad at him scoring at a ridiculous clip. Then I start to think about Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons has played 15 out of 58 potential games this season. I don't know what percentage that is, but that's a ridiculously small percentage. He's getting 24 minutes when he's in there. He's averaging 6 points a game, 7.9 rebounds, 5.7 assists, almost 1 steal. But if a guy like Ben Simmons was supposed to be so integral to your game plan and such an important piece for your team, and he's only playing 15 out of 58 games, you're giving up Dinwiddie at the deadline to get Schroeder because Dinwiddie's not happy there in Brooklyn. I don't know. It just, to me, it seems like the Brooklyn Nets plan to have Ben Simmons on the floor with Mikal and Cam and getting guys open, it just hasn't happened. When he hasn't been out there, they've lost. When he's been out there, it's been sporadic, and you cannot win in the NBA with absolutely no continuity. And that's just kind of like everything you said. I sort of had an epiphany, and that's what it looks like has been going wrong. And you've really seen it, the first 4 or 5 games after the All-Star break. But to me, that's just the most glaring issue. You have your game plan around a guy who plays less than 20% of the time.
Yet fans wanted to say it was all Jacques Vaughn's fault, huh? And it wasn't just Ben Simmons. I mean, I would say, like, outside of Mikal Bridges, like each of the top 7 guys, maybe not Claxton either, but like those 2 guys aside, like it's like the top 6 guys have all missed significant time at like one point or another. It's hard to win this league without stars. It's hard to win the league with a team lacking stars, and the guys are always injured. It's tough, man. It was a tough job for Jock. It's a tough job for Kevin Ollie. It's going to be a tough job for whoever's named head coach of the Nets after this season. It's not going to be fixed overnight, but it's going to be an uphill climb, man. Maybe Sean Marks has something up his sleeve, right? Or maybe it's time to rebuild. Either way, it's going to take time.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You bring up Kevin Ollie a little bit. Saint writes Kevin Ollie is kind of in a no-win situation to me, which I kind of agree with. Talk to me about just some positives that you've seen since Kevin Ollie's taken over as the interim head coach. Obviously, the result and the product have not been what the Nets were looking for, but are there any positives that you can take away outside of that sort of first day where people were just happy because I think they were just happy he got the opportunity?
I just like his confidence. You know, Kevin Ollie is kind of like that uncle, right? He's kind of like that cool uncle that's like been around and seen some things, and you know that, and just has like a lot of wisdom. And when he speaks, you listen, and just hearing some of the things he says in press conferences. If I'm a player on that team, that would fire me up. And the big thing about Ollie, as he walked into his opportunity was, how much his voice resonated within the Nets' locker room. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It's so hard to judge anything about this organization because people are saying things, people are hearing things, but the on-court product does not match those things, right? So, I don't know, man. Like, I really don't know. I like Kevin a lot, for what it's worth. And I would like to see him get an opportunity to coach this team with a truly fresh slate. Maybe a revamped roster. But it's tough, man. It's tough. I wish I had more to say, but it's just a genuinely confusing situation.
It's been 4 games. Obviously, 1-3 is not great with the 1 win coming against the Grizzlies. Give him to the end of the season. You see what he can do. I don't think it's fair to grade him right now, but right. I agree. The confidence, sort of that gritty, I've been here before mentality. He is a champion. 2014 with UConn, that Shabazz Napier team, which was, ridiculous. So I like that about him. I like a guy who comes in with that championship pedigree at any level. What I wanted to know if you had any insight on the latest with Cam Thomas's ankle.
From what I've been told, Cam's x-rays came back negative. He had an MRI the other day, and they still haven't released the results of that MRI publicly, but this will now be 2 straight games he missed. And, he told reporters in the locker room after the game that, he'd be okay, but when you had to get escorted off the court with the help of team trainers, it's usually not a good sign. So he'll miss his 2nd straight game tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get an update on his status then. But again, this Nets team is trying to get hot. It's hard to do that when you don't have your main guys. And for a team that's as offensively challenged as the Nets are right now, not having Cam out there just makes it that much more difficult.
Yeah, they're really limited when he doesn't play. And if Mikhail's in a cold streak, then Lonnie Walker and Dennis Schroeder become their 2 best scorers. I don't know how many games in the NBA you're going to win if those 2 guys are your best scorers.
It's tough.
All right. So I'm not sure if you have it this week, but we have a segment, Inside Info. This segment's brought to you by Slate Milk, the unofficial sponsor of the pod. Grab a lactose-free Slate Milk today. CJ, if you have none, that's a totally acceptable answer. But do you have any inside nuggets of information you can share with us at the end of February here about the Brooklyn Nets?
For what it's worth, I mean, I don't. This is kind of like a hindsight kind of thing, but a lot of fans were clamoring for the team to bring in DeJounte Murray around the trade deadline, and my sources around the league. I mean, I knew that wasn't happening a while back, so I wish I could have warned you guys to kind of temper expectations, but I knew that deal wasn't going down about 2 or 3 weeks ahead of the deadline. So.
I was on Nets Twitter on the podcast every week, begging, pleading for Marks to make a deal for DeJounte Murray. Could have saved me like 2 weeks of content.
Matter of fact, one of the sources told me, their communication with the Nets was actually, the Hawks' communication with the Nets was actually very, very, very minimal. So, but, it's the rumor mill can get a little out of control at times around the trade deadline. So,
and you see what Dinwiddie, you see how Dinwiddie's playing in LA, like, would have never made sense for the Hawks to want it. And I know it would have just been a contract filler, but still, I never bought the Hawks just wanted picks and Spencer Dinwiddie for DeJounte Murray. That makes a lot of sense. CJ, do you think that Nick Claxton will be a Brooklyn Net at the start of the 2024-2025 season?
Well, Nick has stated publicly that he'd like to remain with the Nets. But, the way this season's going, I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to at least, test and see how much he can get on the open market. It's just tough because, winning is like the ultimate nullifier, but the team isn't winning. He's up for a payday. This team could very well be in for a rebuild here soon. So, you got some young guys already in the pipeline with, Day'Ron Sharp and Alabama kid.
Yeah, Alabama's Noah Clowney.
Now, Noah Clowney. So you got some good developmental bigs already in-house. Clowney's done some good things in the G League. And if this team is going towards a rebuild, leaning towards younger players, and Clowney is going to have to be on the court. So, there's going to be a lot of factors out at play, entering the summer. But at the end of the day, this is going to be Nick's first big payday. And he's going to want to get paid, and it's just going to come down to the fact of it's just going to come down to if he fits into the Nets' future plans. Because right now it's what their future plans are is kind of murky.
What stinks is the one win we had this week, against the Memphis Grizzlies. After I got to hear about how Nick Claxton has a relationship with John Morant and he wears his shoes. And there's a potential that he might want to play in Memphis with Jaren Jackson Jr. was, oh yeah, sure, I can play alongside another big. Why not? Like the one win we get, I got to hear about how our starting center might want to play in Memphis. That was a tough pill to swallow.
Hey, look, at the end of the day, Claxton's young. It's his first big payday. He's going to get that money, and he's going to he's going to be in the situation that best supports him. So
I hope it's in Brooklyn. I strongly want Nick Claxton back in Brooklyn. I think if he can work on, I just want him in Brooklyn. Work on the jump shot. He's already elite defensively. He's one of the best lob threats in the league, and I love him. He's good. I want him back in Brooklyn. All right, CJ. Few listener questions. We'll do a little record predictions, and then we'll close out. Number one, this is from Nets Cutie 73. I made that up. What do you need to see out of the Nets for the remainder of the season for fans to have hope in Brooklyn?
Just fight. Just more want to and fight. Certainly way more than what we've seen over these last 4 games. Like I said earlier in the show, this team has showed that they're capable of playing with passion and energy and enthusiasm and joy, and you just haven't seen that. And if this team, it's one thing to lose, it's another thing to get blown out, right? I think fans it would be heart-wrenching, but I think the fan base would be a lot more happy if the Nets were this bad, but they at least tried to compete. If their record is what it is, but at least they tried to compete every night and, gave hope. Mark said that, they made the moves they did at the free agent deadline to create future flexibility. Obviously that kind of, foreshadows, some star hunting. Why would any star want to come to this current situation, right? Everyone's talking about, Donovan Mitchell coming to Brooklyn. Why did you see that Cavs game last night? Like, why would have you seen their record? Why? What would entice him to leave that other than just the idea of living in New York? And what what's the most frustrating aspect of all, at least what I imagine for fans, is the fact that, like I said, they've seen it before, they've shown it. So whatever this team needs to do to get back to that level of passion and energy every night, they need to figure that out. They need to figure that out and just get back to that, man.
Passion, energy. Show us what you were in the beginning of the season. Figure out a way to come together, because I agree with CJ. If you lose out, if you get blown out every night, if you don't make the play-in tournament, nobody's going to want to come to Brooklyn. I don't care that it's in New York. I 100% agree. All right, 2 quick questions from Lee Anthony, who is in the chat. That is a real person. Lee writes, do you feel playing for Team USA had an impact on players during the regular season? Mikal and CJ seem burnt out.
Man, nah. I mean, it is what it is. These guys are athletes. Matter of fact, they're the best athletes in the world. You know, if I had to guess, I think they just might be more burnt out because they're in a situation that they've never been in before. Cam Johnson played for some great Carolina teams before he came to the Phoenix Suns. Mikal Bridges, what, 2-time national champion at Villanova? Helped the Suns to get to their first NBA Finals in my lifetime, right? And now they're in a situation where their metal's being tested, right? And it's hard to keep up that kind of enthusiasm every night, with all the factors going on around them. So not to mention they're both being asked to do more than they've ever been asked to do in their NBA careers. So the Team USA thing, I mean, that's kind of whatever to me. That was over the summer. I think the perception of them being burnt out might be more of a between the ears kind of thing.
Okay. And then next question, what are realistic signings this summer for Brooklyn? Assuming everything goes well for the Nets, they make the play and they're somewhat competitive. Lee Anthony wants to know if it's possible for the Nets to pick up at least 2 All-Stars. 2 All-Stars.
Well, if they make a few moves, maybe move off of Simmons' contract, we'll certainly have the cap space to do so. But again, you bring in those 2 All-Stars, cool. How are you going to build a competitive roster around those guys, right? That's going to be the big thing, because there's a lot of guys on expiring contracts this year. It's going to be a lot of movement this offseason for the Brooklyn Nets. So, I mean, can they do it? Sure, money talks, right? New York City, money talks. They can certainly do it, but I'd be more concerned with bringing in those All-Stars than having complementary pieces around them and have a competitive team.
That's fair. I think that's fair. All right. We're going to play Predict That Record, and then we're going to close out. Next 6 games, CJ. We have Atlanta at home, Memphis at home, 76ers probably without Embiid at home, Pistons in Detroit, Hornets in Charlotte. How do the Nets fare in those 6 games?
3-3.
I think that's fair.
3-3. I think they should get Charlotte. They should get Detroit. They should get Memphis. Maybe 4, maybe 4-2, because I think they'll split against. I would hope that they would split against Atlanta this weekend, having them both at home without Trae Young. So 4-2. I think Philly will be tough. With Embiid or not. It's a rematch game. So that'll be a tough one. I think Atlanta will win one of these 2 games. So what was that? Does that line up right? 4-2?
Yeah, 4-2. 4-2, that lines up right.
4-2, 3-3. Go either way.
I'll go 4-2, and here's what I'll say. It all depends on when Cam Thomas gets back. If you can split against Atlanta without Cam Thomas, which means Lonnie Walker and Cam Johnson got to play big. Mikal Bridges has to play like he was playing before he stunk. Dennis Schroeder's got to show up. Like, you need everyone to show up, and you need Bridges to play well without Cam Thomas. You win one of those games against Atlanta. You go to Memphis. You get Cam back. You beat a not great Grizzlies team at home. You're 2-1. Philly, if Embiid doesn't play, yeah, I'll give you Philly too. You're 3-1. I feel like you're going to either lose to Detroit or Charlotte. I think that's the game. I hope it's not Detroit, but they play us tough, so I can see them beating us, and then we beat Charlotte. So I'm going 4-2 too.
All right, there you have it.
All right, CJ, do you miss covering the Warriors, or like teams that just weren't a complete dumpster fire? That was my last question.
I mean, yeah, I miss covering the Warriors. Just, relationships I have with the players and relationship I have with the different, media people in the organization. But I mean, I've only been covering the Nets for a couple months now, so I'm sure in time all those things will come here too.
Yeah, no, it's going to get a lot better. I don't want to guarantee it, but I think it's going to get a lot better. All right, CJ, thank you so much for coming on. Where can our listeners follow you and find your work?
You guys can find me on Twitter at CJHolmes22.
Awesome. All right. Well, until our next monthly appearance, thanks for coming on the show. For everyone who listened to Fireside Nets this week, thanks a ton. And as always, we will catch you on the Fireside.